Hi there, and thank you for joining us for this second webinar in the Cultural Blueprinting Toolkit series. I'm Joe Ty from Values Coach, and today we're going to cover a very important topic, and that is using the right word, using the right phrase, the power of words, the power of phrases when it comes to crafting a great statement of values or defining your culture or creating expectations in the workplace or promoting your business, recruiting great people. Because the truth is that words have power. And the words you choose can make a huge difference in how your message is received. Here's how Mark Twain put it. The difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between a lightning bug and lightning. Hemingway rewrote the final scene of his classic book, A Farewell to Arms, 48 different times. In fact, the newest edition has all 48 different drafts and alternate endings. And someone asked him, well, why did you do it so many times? And he said, well, I had to get the words right. And today I'm going to share with you some real-world examples of words that change the world, words that transform businesses, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about how you craft your own words in your statement of values, in describing your culture, in your recruiting and marketing materials. Let's look at some words that really did change the world. During World War II, in the Blitz of London, Winston Churchill uttered these words that changed the world. He said, "We shall never surrender." And that statement, that power from the voice of the lion, is what gave the British people the courage to endure what might otherwise have been unendurable. Now, what if instead he had said this? "Oh my God, the Germans are coming. We're all going to die." Now, it sounds ridiculous that he would have said that, but you know, right after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, that's exactly what the CEOs of America's largest airline companies said. They fired more than 140,000 people. The CEO of United told every employee our company could, and he used this word, perish within the next year. And what they did through the use of their words, perish instead of victory, they created a culture, an environment of fear, and they contributed to kicking our economy into a serious recession through that act of verbal cowardice. Words have power. One of the most important sayings of the 20th century, another one, in the darkest days of the Great Depression, Franklin Roosevelt went on the radio, a new technology at that point, and he said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." And the very next day, the bank run stopped. Now, there was a long haul to get the country back out of the Depression, and it took years, but that was the turning point. That one statement ended the bank runs, and it gave people hope, and it got us back on an optimistic path again. I have a dream. Those powerful words mark a turning point in the war against segregation in this country. And to be sure, there are still many, many challenges. And if Martin Luther King were alive today, he would be having new dreams. But he, with that one statement, was able to articulate a dream that any parent, any human being should be able to relate to. Ronald Reagan, "It's morning again in America." That was probably one of the most powerful and effective political campaign slogans, maybe of all time, because it is what put him ahead in the presidential race. And there's actually been a fair amount of research, some of it summarized by Martin Seligman in his famous book on learned optimism. And in his book, he cited research where they compared political candidates who had a positive message, an optimistic message, versus those who had a negative message about everything that's wrong in the world. And substantially, the positive message resulted in electoral victory, and the negative messages resulted in electoral defeat. And now, with us being in the midst of yet another presidential campaign in which most of the campaigning seems to be negative, we'll see how this plays out. But when it comes to promoting your organization, when it comes to promoting your personal values, it's very clear that a positive message about what you're for is going to be far more effective than a negative message about what you're against. What you love overpowers what you say you hate. So let's look at some words, some phrases that truly launched a transformative business success. And Exhibit A, of course, is Nike. Just do it. That simple 3-word phrase launched that company onto a much higher level of success. Absolutely, positively. How many of us, if that's the only 2 words you hear, absolutely, positively, will be able to finish the sentence when it absolutely, positively has to be there overnight? And this propelled FedEx against Brand X, all of the other competitors, in a very tight, very competitive field. Now let's look at another business, duct tape. Now, if anybody should have dominated that market, it'd be 3M. They invented Scotch tape. They invented duct tape, but they lost the lead. And who did they lose the lead to? The guy who had the insight to trademark the term duct tape, which is what we all call it. And that simple change from duct to duct tape launched his business onto a much higher level of success. Amazon, they actually patented the words one click, and one of the most controversial patents ever issued, because nobody else can use the term one click without paying Amazon a royalty fee. And it's been estimated, what is the value to Amazon of that patent, of owning those words one click? And the estimate is $2.4 billion in annual revenue last year as a result of owning one click. That is increased sales from making one click possible, and licensing to other organizations. Anytime you see one click, that organization, that company is paying Amazon for the privilege of using the words and the process of one click. And one of my favorites, there's an industrial ventilation systems company in Kentucky. Their old name was HVLS Systems, Inc. HVLS stands for high volume, low speed. That's what these great big fans that you see in factories and warehouses and sporting gymnasiums do. They move a lot of air with big fans that go very slow. And this company, HVLS Systems, Inc., got a new marketing director, and he kept telling the CEO, that name is boring. Let's change the name of the company to the thing that our customers already all call us. And they finally did. They changed from HVLS Systems, Inc. to Big Ass Fans. Guess what? For sure, they lost some sales in the early days. Some people were offended by that. But their sales have more than doubled virtually every year since. They had to move into a new and bigger factory. And now they've actually opened up a residential division. So yes, indeed, you can have your very own Big Ass Fan right there in your house. Simply changing the name of the company propelled their sales. It made it the kind of company that their employees were much more proud to be a part of. It gave them millions of dollars of free publicity, of free advertising, simply with a name change. Now, when I share this in presentations to healthcare audiences, and often the hospital CEOs in the room, and I will look at the CEO and I say, now I know what you're thinking, but it's too late, because I went to GoDaddy.com, I'll say, and I bought the domain name, and I now own the URL for bigasshospital.com, and it's for sale. And I'll tell them that they can have it for a mere $25,000. So far, nobody has taken me up on it, but you know what? It's a great name, and it's just a matter of time. Now, one way that you can tell that words have incredible power and staying power is when they actually become part of our cultural DNA. Good example, the Die Hard battery. Now, that's a pretty good name for a battery. You know, it'll live a long time. And then along comes Bruce Willis with Die Hard 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and I have no idea how many they're up to now. But when your product name becomes institutionalized as a movie series, then you know that you've actually created something that has huge impact. Another example, in the movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Terminator, and then he runs for governor of California, and now he is the Governator. And that is taking one word, Terminator, and expanding it into something something very different and something much bigger. So you all know who this guy is, I'm sure. And what is he shouting into his phone? And you know the answer: show me the money. Sam Horn, who is an authority on positioning yourself, your business. She's written some great books like Tung Fu, and she calls these money phrases because they're the things when somebody's walking out of a theater, it sticks with them. And this, of course, is the movie Jerry Maguire, which has this other great money line: "You had me at hello." And "you had me at hello," like other great money lines, actually becomes a meme, and it starts a fad of spin-offs, of takeoffs on that. "You had me at hello, but lost me as soon as you kept speaking." And when you create a phrase, or when you can use a word that other people pick up and adapt, modify, change in some other way, you know you're really onto something. Words can also launch a movement. Let's look at some fairly recent ones. Many of you, I know, participated in the Ice Bucket Challenge, raised tens of millions, in fact, I believe hundreds of millions of dollars for ALS. And you know, you'll notice if you look on that bucket, you see the pound sign, the hashtag ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. In today's world, when you can put a hashtag on a word, suddenly that word becomes even more powerful, doesn't it? And what this did, what that simple challenge, creating a visual image with powerful words, is it became such a fad that celebrities all across the country, people like Bill Gates here, participated in it. And it really did take on all of the attributes of a real movement. More recently, this is Miss Colorado at the Miss America contest, and for her talent, she didn't come out and sing and dance or something like that. She came out with her stethoscope and her scrubs, and she talked about being a nurse. And then there's on a TV show, I don't watch TV, but it's called The View, and a woman named Joy Behar said, "What's she doing wearing a doctor's stethoscope?" And that went viral in a very negative way. At my last check, 4.5 million people have viewed that video of Joy Behar saying that. And by 3,000 to 1, negative comments are outweighing positive comments. And this has sparked a movement. Nurses Unite. You notice the stethoscope there on the heart. And people are creating products. This is a fridge magnet you can buy. Oh no, how did this doctor's stethoscope end up around my neck? And in hospitals and long-term care facilities and clinics and emergency departments all across the country, people are gathering together, nurses gathering together with their stethoscopes and getting their picture taken and putting them on Twitter, on Facebook. And there are thousands and thousands of them. And again, you'll notice the hashtag, nurses share your stethoscopes, nurses unite. The power of taking a few words, tagging on a hashtag, and suddenly it can go viral. And this is engaged in one way or another more than 1 million people in a couple of months. That is the power of getting the words right, of using one word. Now let's talk about words that make values real. And if you have looked into the Cultural Blueprinting Toolkit workbook, if you've watched some of the webinars I've done, if you've heard me speak about it, you know that most statements of values, as legitimate as they are, have two common problems. And problem number one is that they frequently don't do much to distinguish your organization from everybody else that's in the same business, or often from others that are even in different businesses. If you have a statement of values that talks about quality, excellence, innovation, and compassion, well, that's all well and good, but every hospital, every clinic, for that matter, a lot of retail facilities and factories might talk about the same things: quality, innovation, excellence. How do you create a statement of values that makes you unique and distinct? And another problem with most statements of values is that actually they set a pretty low bar. If I am a customer, of course I expect quality. Of course I expect integrity. Of course I expect a commitment to excellence. What I want to see is something that raises the bar, something that makes you different, something that sets you apart from every other competitor. And a great example of doing it right is Zappos, where they have 10 core values. And by the way, if you Google careers at Zappos, you don't get taken to a page that talks about wages, salaries, and job openings. You get taken to a page that talks about their core values. And in one of my other webinars, I said a statement of core values should define three things: who you are, what you stand for, and what you won't stand for. And right here, Zappos does it. You know, who are we? We deliver wow through service. Notice that they don't talk about selling shoes. They talk about wow service. And what do they stand for? Well, they stand for fun. They stand for driving change, a little bit of weirdness, being good stewards by doing more with less. What won't they stand for? Well, they won't stand for disengaged, dispassionate workers. They won't stand for arrogant people, because one of their core values is be humble. Somebody who really captured that, my very favorite core value of all time, company in Iowa called Integrated DNA Technologies, and one of their core values is be yourself, unless you're a jerk. And in 6 words, they really capture it all. Bring your best self to work every day. Be yourself. Don't pretend to be somebody else thinking you're going to impress us, because you won't. Be a team player. Treat other people with respect. Oh, and leave your negative attitudes, leave your toxic behaviors out in the parking lot, because we don't tolerate jerks in our organization. Another favorite, very opposite end of the spectrum, Cypress Semiconductor, a high-tech company in the Silicon Valley where the stereotype culture is laid back and easygoing, beer bashes on Friday, wear your sandals to work. Not at Cypress Semiconductor. 2 of their core values. One is we are about winning and we do not tolerate losing, and we make our numbers, no excuses. Their CEO actually wrote a book, No Excuses Management, and they call themselves the Marine Corps of Silicon Valley. Now let's take a look at the power of the words they're using. We are about winning. We don't tolerate losing. We make our numbers, no excuses. We are the Marine Corps of Silicon Valley. You know, these guys never, ever make hiring mistakes, because nobody would even think to apply at a company where those are the core values, where that's what they call themselves, and where that's the kind of book their CEO has written, if they didn't think they had the mental toughness, the emotional stamina to work in that kind of an environment. They have captured in a brilliant way, like it or not. I would not be able to work there, but I admire the way they have said, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, and this is what we won't stand for. Again, all through the power of words. Another favorite, Southwest Airlines core values. In 6 words, if you count the hyphen, they describe who they are, what they stand for, and what they won't stand for. Servant's heart, warrior spirit, fun-loving attitude. And all that in just 6 words. If you've heard me speak about this, you probably know that I worked with an entrepreneurial startup that came up with this. We're tough, we're focused, we win. And I was so impressed with that I actually stole it. I've apprehended it for myself, and I've made it a personal mantra. I'm tough. Now, people who know me know that's really not true. I'm not tough. I'm focused. That is even less true. But here's what I do know. If I can go into the room in my basement where I write, close the door, sit down at a yellow pad, and yes, I still write the old-fashioned way. If I can be tough with myself and say I'm going to be here for 2 hours, if I can be focused by turning off email, no computer, and just focus on the task at hand, then I win by getting my writing done, by meeting my writing deadline. And so you see, when you have this sort of a description of your culture, a 6-word culture description, not only is it a description, it becomes a prescription. This is what we expect. We expect in this company that you will be tough, you will be focused, and you will achieve results. You will win. Now let's look at words that make for an effective recruiting pitch. One of my very favorites, and this is from about 100 years ago, but when Ernest Shackleton was recruiting men for his voyage to the Antarctic, this is a famous ad. There's some question about whether it actually was run, but if it wasn't, it should have been. Men wanted for hazardous journeys, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. He wanted something like 50 people for this cruise. He got more than 5,000 men show up. Why? If he had run an ad saying, oh, this is going to be a simple, easy voyage, he never would have gotten that. What he was looking for was a certain kind of man, and those men responded. They resonated with that ad. I found this online. I love this one. New tattoo artist wanted to apply, fill in the QR code. And you can see a guy up there very intricately filling in the QR code. That's the application form. And what they are doing is in the application form, they are actually doing a pre-qualification. Another favorite ad, and I couldn't find a picture of it, but Southwest Airlines ran one probably 20, 25 years ago. It's a picture from a cartoon book of a dinosaur, and this little kid has colored all over it, in the lines and outside of the lines. And the ad said, that's little Johnny practicing for a career at Southwest Airlines, where we encourage people to be authentic, be unique, be themselves, and draw outside of the lines. And you know, anybody seeing that ad, first of all, it makes you smile. And second, if you're like me anyway, it makes you think, I would like to be a part of a company like that. And so let's shift gears for a minute. I'd like to share with you some of the ways that we are trying to grow our mission here at Values Coach. We're trying to spark a movement. We're trying to change the world in our own way and in the ways we can. And there's some very important phrases that we've been using. And one of them is proceed until apprehended, the three most important words in the Florence prescription book. And it conveys that to be a leader, you do not have to have a management title. It conveys that you don't give in to learned helplessness, thinking like a victim, pointing fingers, waiting for someone else to empower you, to give you permission. But if it's the right thing to do, you do it. This is a picture taken from Kalispell Regional Healthcare, where we gave them that banner. We do that for our significant clients. And nobody in this picture has a management title, but they are all leaders. They all have that proceed until apprehended attitude about getting things done. And in fact, the overarching core value of Kalispell Regional Healthcare is do the right thing. If it's the right thing to do for a patient, for your coworkers, for our community, find a way to do it. And that proceed until apprehended is really an overarching theme for the whole concept of self-empowerment that is so central to the work that we do. Another word that has really taken off is the word pickle, and the pickle challenge, and the pickle pledge. And we call it that because people who are always whining, always complaining, always negative, look like they've been sucking on a pickle. And so we take the picture of the pickle, we couple it with the word pickle. And I think the reason this has taken off so well is because people really can relate to what someone who's sucking on a pickle looks like. They look like this. And we have taken a page out of the anti-smoking movement, and we now encourage people to declare your workspace a pickle-free zone, the way we used to have to declare our workspace a smoke-free zone to keep people from coming in and polluting the air with toxic cigarette smoke. Now we're saying leave your bitching, moaning, whining, complaining, gossiping, criticizing at the door. I don't want to hear it. And again, this thing has taken on a life of its own. And we have actually, in the last year, we have launched something new. We call it the Pickle Challenge for Charity. And we will challenge an organization to raise a certain amount of money in 1 week, in quarters, by having individuals catch themselves and catch each other, whining, complaining, pointing fingers, and inviting the other person or yourself volunteering to put a quarter in a pickle jar. And you have pickle jars all around the organization. And so, for example, an organization of a couple thousand people, we will challenge to raise $1,000 in quarters in 1 week and then donate that money to an appropriate charity, typically an employee crisis fund. And if they hit the target and raise the money, then we at Values Coach agree that we will match it. In the year that's about to end, in 2015, we have already donated $10,000 to 12 different organizations, employee assistance funds. Now, think of what that means. In just those 12 organizations, 40,000 times In a 1-week period, people caught themselves with pickle in their mouth, caught themselves complaining, and put a quarter in the jar. If you extrapolate that to a full year, and if they could maintain that momentum for a year, that means that 2 million times a year in just those 12 organizations, people will have pulled the plug on complaining, on whining, on being a victim, and said, no, I'm going to find a constructive suggestion. I'm going to find a blessing. I'm going to turn this thing around. And what happens is, as people start to appreciate just how negative they can be, as they start to appreciate how nice it is to not be that way, to not have those negative Nellies surrounding you, they begin to have a permanent change on the culture of the organization, in the same way that as we got used to how beautiful it was to not have to be poisoned by other people's cigarette smoke, that we stopped tolerating it. I got a letter from Paul Udemark, the CEO of a hospital, Fillmore County Hospital in Geneva, Nebraska. And he said, as a result of the pickle challenge and the other things that they've been doing, I got a whole new team and didn't have to change any of the people because they changed themselves. And he also said that some of the most negative people in that hospital, and the people who didn't want to make the change, ended up leaving and going somewhere else, not because their supervisor told them or terminated them, but because their coworkers started putting pressure on them to, if you can't be a positive person, go work for somebody else. And they did. And one of the ways that having the right words can be so powerful is that it can create a healthy sense of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a form of mental illness, actually, and it's trying to hold two incompatible beliefs at the same time. And a great example, I was talking to the CEO of a hospital that made a serious, significant turnaround. They were in deep trouble, and 2 years later, they were doing great. And what he told me is, the most important thing I did is I went around the hospital and I pointed to plaques on the wall that had our vision, mission, values, and I said, are we who we say we are? And more often than not, the answer was no, that we were not actually living those values. And he said that simply holding that mirror up to people and saying, this is who we say we are, this is what I'm seeing in our behavior, how do we close that gap? He said that was the starting point and the single most important catalyst for sparking a huge culture transformation in that organization, which resulted in trailing indicators like patient satisfaction, productivity, community image being improved as well. And here's a way that, and many of you are familiar with this, a way that we are using this in a constructive way. This is the Self-Empowerment Pledge. I know many of you have seen these 7 promises. Many of you are making them a part of your life. And it's one promise for each day of the week. And what happens is, as people make those promises and they become internalized in your own personal DNA, you catch yourself more vividly breaking those promises. And that's painful. Remember, it's mental illness to have cognitive dissonance, to promise to be responsible and accountable and determined and resilient and positive, and then to make excuses and blame other people and complain about your problems, complain about your predicaments. That's cognitive dissonance. And if you keep making the promises, you must begin to change your attitudes and change your behaviors and create new habits. And as you do that, you start to get different and better outcomes. And what we're seeing, again, all across the country, is we're seeing people as groups making the promises together every day, wearing their wristbands, as all of these nurse managers are doing, and holding each other to a higher standard of expectations when it comes to the attitude and the behaviors that you bring to work, when it comes to how you treat the people you serve, how you treat the people that you work with. And if you pick up the most recent Chicken Soup for the Soul book, which is Inspiration for Nurses, one of the 101 stories in there, written by Bob Dent, the Chief Operating Officer at Midland Memorial Hospital, is a story about how one of their registered nurses, Kyle here, by taking to heart those promises, was able to break what had been a tenacious and well-hidden drug addiction. And the word that Kyle used, and is quoted in the story as saying, the word he used to describe the transformation he had made in his life by living those promises, the word was miracle. Now, a quick break for a commercial pause here. If you haven't already checked out the Pledge Power course, I encourage you to do that. Go to pledgepower.com, click on the tab that says Detailed Course Outline, and see what all is included in this course. And anybody who signs up, we begin by sending them a set of the 7 wristbands, one for each day's promise, a copy of the book, Your Dreams Are Too Small, which describes in one of the chapters how the pledge works, and links to 21 10 to 11-minute videos, video webinars, 3 for each of the promises that successively go into more detail on specific actions and techniques that you can take to live those promises. Now, I want to wrap up and talk about power words, and there are many, many of them, but let me just illustrate a few. And one is the word speaking versus talking. Now, if someone asks me, are you a speaker or are you a talker? I would much rather be a speaker. You know, you're a great speaker or you're a great talker conveys 2 very different meanings. But I was doing some research on this, and on some sales pages that talk about power language, one of them said, be careful in how you use that word speaking. If you're speaking to somebody, that conveys a one-way dialogue or a one-way monologue, whereas if you're speaking with somebody, that conveys more of a conversation. And it went on to say, even better is to say, I'm not speaking to someone, I'm talking to someone, or I'm talking with somebody, because speaking conveys something that is more formal, whereas talking conveys something that is more informal, more personal, more casual, and you're more likely to have your phone answered if you're talking to somebody than if you're speaking to them. And the next one, I think, by consensus, is seen as the most powerful, the most persuasive word in the English language. So get your pens out and get ready for the one word, and that is the word because. And in her article, Say This, Not That, 13 Power Words for Selling, Christine Gorju said, because is one of the ultimate power words, the 5 most persuasive words in the English language, others being words like you, because everybody listens to the same radio station. What's in it for me? Everybody loves, as Dale Carnegie said, the sound of their own voice. And there's actually been some research on this. Some Stanford researchers did a study where they had people barge into a line at a copy machine and ask if they could, get ahead because they were in a hurry. And when people used the word because, it didn't matter what they said next. Because I've got to get my wife to the hospital, because I'm in a hurry to get to a test, because I have to go to the bathroom. It didn't matter what followed, but when they started with the word because, people behind who would have been ahead of them in line were far more likely to let them in. And the lesson here is that if you're trying to convince somebody of anything, to do a better job of customer service, to do a better job of teamwork, to do a better job of saving money, if you can explain to them why this is important, because we need this, they're much more likely to embrace and to go along. Another power word is imagine. Imagine a world where. Imagine if we could. What if? Why not? And the ultimate use of that was Steve Jobs and his famous reality distortion field. And the saying was that if you were within 10 or 20 feet of Steve Jobs and he used the word imagine, he actually distorted what was considered to be impossible to become possible. He could actually change people's perception of reality. And then my favorite, and what I dedicated one of my books. In the dedication, I said, happiness is being able to say I love you to the people you work with and to really mean it. And love is an incredible power word. And if you can couple with it, I love you, and really mean it, then it's not just a personal thing, but it can be a great source of business effectiveness, of business success. A book written some years ago said, love is the killer app. If you bring love to work, if your people bring love to work, it's very difficult for others to compete with you. And I want to make a distinction here, or a clarification. Unfortunately, in the English language, we do not have nearly enough words for love. If I say I love my wife, I love to hike in the Grand Canyon, and I love hot dogs, Those three things are very different uses of the word love. And unfortunately, we only have one word to cover those things. And again, probably nobody captures this more genuinely and effectively than Southwest Airlines. The airline that was built on love, that flies out of love field, that has a heart on every plane. And when they say, I love you at Southwest Airlines, not only do they mean it from the heart, but they mean it through their actions and in how they treat each other and in how they treat their customers. And one more use of words that I do want to address, we can get into this more in a future webinar, but that is the importance of how you structure words in a question. Poet Nancy Willard said, sometimes questions are more important than answers. Tony Robbins said, if you want to change the quality of your life, change the quality of your questions. And very often we ask close-ended questions. Are we there yet? No. That's a close-ended question. And in sales, they tell you not to do that, to rather ask more open-ended questions that can start a dialogue. Ask an open-ended question that can move you toward a close-ended question where the answer is going to be yes. And so a couple questions. Let me wrap up with this. How do you tell people about the values of your organization in a way that both touches the heart and also that differentiates you from your competitors? We create fun and a little weirdness. Nobody but Zappos could ever do that. And if you see that in somebody else's statement of values, you know that they are a copycat. We don't tolerate losing. You know that is Cypress Semiconductor, and nobody else could do that. Servant's heart, warrior spirit, fun-loving attitude. That's Southwest Airlines. Nobody else could do that without being a copycat. How do you describe your culture in a way that also prescribes what your cultural expectations are? We often do this with clients. You know, describe your culture in 6 words, not 5, not 7. It's like a haiku or a sonnet with a formal structure. And if you can come up with something that's incredibly powerful, like the Marine Corps of Silicon Valley, we're tough, we're focused, we win. Not only does it describe what you want your culture to be, it prescribes the sort of behaviors that you have to see from people in order to build that culture. Third question, how do you inspire your people to come to work every day and bring their best selves to work, to do their best work when they are there? Be yourself, unless you're a jerk. That really captures what integrated DNA technologies expects of people. Be humble. Tony Hsieh, in his book Delivering Happiness, writes that they have turned away people who want to work for Zappos who could make them a lot of money. They're Silicon Valley wizards. They're smart. They're aggressive. They could create new products. They could sell their stuff, but they're arrogant. They're self-centered. And they would wreck the culture that Zappos has worked so hard to create. And so they turn them away. They would rather turn away growth and new revenue and protect their culture by inspiring their people to be humble, to have fun, to create a little bit of weirdness. And finally, when you're out recruiting, when you're looking for the people that you want to have, instead of just running a generic help wanted ad, how do you encourage the people that you want to have work with you, distinguish you from everybody else? Serious danger, bitter cold, safe return unlikely. That is going to dramatically narrow the population of people who are going to apply, but it is also going to assure that you have the kind of people that you want to have on your team actually come in and apply. And so let me wrap up and ask you to keep calm and see what your questions are. And I see that we have one now that is actually a very good question. And that question is, okay, so I want to do a better job of using words effectively. I want to ask better questions. How do I find inspiration to do that? And I'd say a couple things. One is do what I did in preparing for this. Just go online. Google terms like power words for recruiting, power words for selling, motivational phrases, and make notes. you'll come up with a lot of great ideas. Check out what have companies that have a great statement of values. What do those values say? How do they word their values? And what can you learn from that? Think about your own experiences. You know, I referenced a couple of movies like Jerry Maguire, which has some money phrases in it. Think about your own experiences, the books you've read, people you've talked to. Read some history. What are the words that have changed the world? Like, I have a dream, or we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And how can you adapt? What can you learn from those in your own phrasing and developing things like job descriptions or recruiting or promotional ads? Another question here: how do you know it's the right word? Wow. William Wrigley, the founder of the chewing gum company, once said, I think it was him, he said, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. I just wish I knew which half. A couple of things you can do, especially in today's world, if you're trying to do something on the internet, is you can test. You send two different versions out and see which one works the best. Put something on Twitter and see how many people retweet it. And if you don't get the kind of response you want, try it in a different way. Check it out just face to face with people. Here's what I think. If you're doing a recruiting ad, do two different versions. See which one has the best results. And I'd add one more thing. At a personal level, it's not just the words themselves. If you're trying to convey a message, it is also the way in which you convey that. If your passion doesn't shine through, if your enthusiasm isn't there, it's far less likely, well, in fact, it simply won't. It will not have the impact. In my presentations, I will often show a video of Taylor Mali, M-A-L-I. Taylor is a teacher and a poet, and I'll show a video of him performing about a 3.5-minute poem that he wrote at a poetry slam called What Teachers Make. It is powerful. It is moving. It always gets a round of applause. It always touches people. And then I'll ask people, so I could also have gone online and found a printed version of this poem, printed it out, put it in front of every seat, and asked you all to read it. Would that have had the same impact? And of course, everybody knows, no, it would not. And then I say, I could have gone online and found a video of a much younger Taylor Mali standing at a podium reading his poem. Would that have had the same impact? And again, the answer is no, it would not. And the difference is not the words, it's the same poem, whether you're reading a printed version, watching Taylor stand there at a podium and read it, or watching him perform it at a poetry slam, but the emotional impact, the inspiration you draw from it is substantially different. And so it's not just the words, it is also how you present the words. Does your passion come through? Does your commitment come through? Does your enthusiasm come through? And those are some things that we'll cover in future webinars, future conference calls. For now, I just want to thank you for having been on. If you have any further questions, just send me an email, joe@valuescoach.com, and I will respond. And I will also be sending a copy of these slides to all of our subscribers, whether you are on the call or not. So keep calm, keep doing good work, never fear, never quit, and expect a miracle. 7 of my favorite words.